Season number 6 of Cobra Kai has begun airing on Netflix, and I will be watching season 6 part 1 later today, and I'll come back with thoughts on that either tomorrow or the day after here on the World of Geekdom YouTube channel. But for now, I want to discuss season 5, going through my watching of Cobra Kai up until this point. I was able to binge it in a relatively short period of time, and I have reviews on all previous 4 seasons of Cobra Kai on the channel right now. But let's talk about season 5. So the cliffhanger of season 4 was that Miguel went to Mexico and that Terry Silver got John Kreese arrested. Season 5 is the Terry Silver season. At this point, John Kreese is pretty much locked up for the entirety of the season, essentially. And Terry Silver becomes the lead villain of this season, and he takes things to a new level. With his power and his money and his influence, he's able to spread Cobra Kai all throughout the valley and beyond. And his goals are, in a very interesting way, world martial arts domination. And that's what he wants to do. And the things he does in this season, I mean, this show, at this point, once you finally accept it as to how ridiculous this entire show is, it really is easier to watch. Things happen here that you would see happen in a 80s film from Chuck Norris or Van Damme or Arnold or Stallone, but The Karate Kid is also an 80s film. So it's really borrowing the feel of that and that type of storytelling for a new audience, where things just go very over the top and can blend into not being realistic. And Terry Silver's methods are mafioso, to say the least. In this instance, the crew composed of Daniel, Chozen, and Johnny are up against now something that's far beyond just the threat of John Kreese. Now they're up against the guy who has connections, who has power, and who's putting the grip on them. I liked how in the early episodes, Silver almost warned Daniel several times not to get involved. And Daniel did it anyways because he wanted to do what the right thing was. Now, if I'm going to give a criticism of this season, it's not really a big one. There were some things in the finale that were ridiculously over the top, but not any more over the top than anything you'll see in a Japanese kung fu action film or a Hong Kong kung fu action film. But I was surprised as to how short the Mexico arc was. The fact that Johnny and Robbie go to Mexico to find Miguel was only 2 episodes, and I was kind of surprised about that. Genuinely, I expected that story arc to go on for at least 5 episodes, but they wrapped it up in 2 and started up episode 3 of season 5. It almost felt like a bizarre side quest that isn't even brought up again, like barely even brought up again. I mean, it was brought up, but it was almost like closure for that side of Miguel, and we just move on. So that was a bit fast. Now, afterward, what I thought was very, very interesting is they chose to bring back one of the only characters left that I was wondering if they would bring back, and that is Mike Barnes, the lead student of Terry Silver, going all the way back to The Karate Kid Part 3. That's the guy who Daniel fights at the end of the movie. I fully expected Barnes to end up with Terry Silver, and the surprising twist of that not being the case was pretty pleasant. I mean, it sort of shows that people do grow up, and I really like what they did with the character. I didn't think I would at first, but he really grew on me. He really, really did grow on me, and the idea, I think, got better and better as the season went on. I liked how the characters in this season had their own, each one sort of had their own arc or their own sort of story. You know, the overarching character arc in this season was Tori's slow turn to the light side when she starts to realize Cobra Kai's dirty and what Terry Silver had been doing. And instead of getting Barnes, Terry Silver instead goes to the past and brings several martial artists, including a couple of guys that were actually UFC fighters, as you know, some of the minions, from the Far East, including the granddaughter of this martial arts instructor who basically he was the master of a technique that is now known as Taekwondo, but he actually had a much darker side to his version of it, and that's where we see sort of the first, sort of like the friendship of John Kreese and Terry Silver after the war, because there's a flashback sequence of them together where Kreese is talking to him about Johnny Lawrence and about, being his top student and everything like that. But Silver talks about his plan to expand Cobra Kai worldwide, and he's being trained. And so this backstory, this sort of connection to me and part of the expansion of Cobra Kai, I thought did great, because they took literally a throwaway line from the first movie, which many people thought was just Terry Silver just BSing around, and turned it into an actual backstory and character. And that shows that the creators of this show are freaks for the original trilogy, and it shows that these creators also are great at taking things, expounding on it, and have so much respect for the lore, unlike what Star Wars has given us for the past few years. This here felt very respected, but also the story continues. The characters have arcs. I mentioned the other character arc here is that Johnny Lawrence has to come to terms with the fact that he's about to be a father, and that becomes a big story, and they have a lot of comedy with him. Lots of comedy in this season being turned up. He becomes an Uber driver for a while. He really is, for the first half of the season, kind of a comedic character. That's really what he is, and that's his role. Same thing with Chozen. Chozen does a lot of comedic martial arts stuff, but man, is he a badass. And I love every sequence of him in this season. This is definitely his season, along with Terry Silver. Now, one of the things that I found interesting was and this can be misconstrued, or maybe not misconstrued, but some have said that Kenny Payne's, he's almost too good too fast. It feels like in this show, obviously the kids become very good at martial arts very fast, when really this is only taken place within a span of a year and a half or so. It's like 18 months. It hasn't been that long. And so because of that, it makes you wonder, like, when did they get so good? Like, there's a scene where Terry Silver teaches Kenny a technique, and then by the very next episode, or later in that same episode, I forget, he already knows how to do it. They did all the training off screen, but they don't really explain how much time has passed. Has it been a week? Has it been a few days? Like, it's very, very, very unusual thing. And one of the things I thought they could have done, and I see this now in hindsight, that would have made the show better, is it would have been better if we actually saw each of the kids increase in belt rank as the series progressed. Meaning, like, for the first couple of seasons, maybe Samantha and Miguel are at like white belt, yellow belt, and then they move on to blue, brown belt. You know what I mean? I think that would have been cool to kind of differentiate the seasons during the training sequences, that is. And it would have been cool just to kind of see how they evolve until finally in season 6 they got their black belts. I mean, that'd be awesome if they did it that way. Even though I think there may be a scene near the end where they do get certified black belt, it does kind of seem like they're all still white belts. When they train, it's all still white belts. So you would think they would do it a bit more accurate to real life, but not so much. John Kreese in prison here, we'd see a lot of backstory. We see that he still has a lot of emotions for Johnny Lawrence. I have a prediction about where that's going to go at the end of Cobra Kai. Like at the very, very end. I think that Kreese's soft spot for Johnny Lawrence is going to end up being a big part of his character arc in season 6. But here, I mean, it's just so insane. The season literally ends with him breaking out of prison in something that looks like it was taken out of a Batman movie. Like, it felt like a combination of what Hannibal Lecter did in Silence of the Lambs and what the Joker did, in The Dark Knight. Like, it's a very, very interesting prison break. Not, again, unexpected. I was also surprised very much. There's an episode where Daniel's wife goes back to her hometown in Ohio, and she meets the woman that was Daniel's girlfriend back in Karate Kid Part 3. Jessica Andrews. That was, again, very unexpected. But I thought it was smart the way they used her character, because she had to explain to Amanda she had to explain to her the history of Daniel and Terry Silver and what they had gone through all the way in the past. Now, I like that. That was very smart, and I thought it was well done. Now, the finale was so over the top, like I said, having, the martial artists, Daniel's old rivals, Barnes, Lawrence, and Chozen going into Terry Silver's place, and there's that crazy sword fight with the sai against the sword featuring the villains from 2 and 3, and the whole crew of MMA fighters that were brought in. Well, martial arts instructors. Some of them were real life MMA fighters, like Wonder Boy Thompson and Tyrone Woodley were both in this season. Johnny Lawrence is getting his face pummeled. Again, some of these blows would be enough to take someone's life, and they actually did threaten. Like, it was almost like Terry Silver was telling him when he said finish him, like Mortal Kombat, he was saying to actually finish him, like take him out permanently, which is crazy. Terry Silver, the most evil villain in Cobra Kai. John Kreese, I think he's a traumatized, he's a very flawed man. He's a very man in pain. He's a man clearly in pain, but he's also a man who I think is not a sociopath. I think he's got a lot of flaws. He's not a very good person, but he's also a character that I think has some good in him. Like, there is good in him. Terry Silver, there's no redeeming qualities, and as a result of that, was played so comically, and it was played up so much like the classic days of, Saturday morning cartoon villains or these terrorist villains from so many 80s movies. This show is not afraid to embrace how 80s it is. Plus, with the soundtrack, I mean, every episode brings in a song from the 80s or sometime around then that it licenses to fit the mood or to, tell a story. I mean, I never thought that I would see. There's a scene in season, I think it was the second to last episode or the last episode. It was the last episode where it's Johnny, Chozen, and Daniel in a limo together and they're singing Eye of the Tiger. Like, that's nuts. It's so surreal. I would have never believed I'd see that. Then again, I never would have believed, going all the way back to Karate Kid 3, that we'd actually see Chozen someday fight Terry Silver. I thought those characters were going to be retired and never seen again, and here we are. In fact, as of the end of Season 5, the only major characters we haven't seen come back, besides, of course, Miyagi, because Pat Morita passed away, is we haven't seen the characters from the next Karate Kid come back. Like Julie, for example. But I think there will be room in Season 6 to bring her back, and I have a theory as to how that may happen. But first, I want to watch Season 6 first and see if maybe they already give clues and see where it goes. And like I said, I'll be watching that later today. And so Season 5 was nuts. I mean, it was just so damn crazy, but it wasn't, at this point, I was already so accustomed. Like, I was so accustomed to this show hitting new heights, and it as far as just the ridiculousness goes, and it does, the kids, learning combat a bit too easily. The idea that certain people can beat certain people a little too quickly, that stuff was kind of weird. But by the end, we did see the character development of sort of the breakup and the reunion. They're like Corey and Topanga here, of Miguel and Samantha. And then on the other side, the whole thing with Tori and Robbie, and Tori kind of joining the light and maybe being part of Miyagi-Do going into the big tournament that I know is happening in Season 6, man. The worldwide Sekai Taikai tournament that was discussed in this season. And I also want to say, I don't think we've seen the last of Terry Silver. I know he got arrested, and they're saying that his lawyers are going to have to work hard, but he'll probably be bailed out because he's got the money. I do not think we have seen the last of Terry Silver. John Kreese is finally out in that Dark Knight Joker / Hannibal Lecter prison break scene at the end, which was just so over the top. I mean, this dude, he's got to be leaving the country or something, because they're going to be going after him. And I mean, who knows? The Sekai Taikai is probably not taking place in the United States, so that will lead to new adventures near the end of Season 6 of Cobra Kai. And whatever they do to go into whatever ends up happening with the Karate Kid movie next year. featuring Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, and it's going to be the crossover of the Miyagi-verse with the 2010 film. We'll finally see what that connection is. But I like season 5 a lot. Ridiculous, yes. Over the top, yes. Funny. Couple of things I would tweak here and there. I mentioned, it could have been better, I think, but I think I really enjoyed it. And I want to actually discuss the one thing that this season did is it actually did break me emotionally. I want to tell you what I'm talking about. Season 5, episode 6. The final 3 scenes of that season hit me so hard. Just everything with Kreese fighting against the criminals and that whole sequence of him just being a total badass and having them submit to him, followed by Daniel being emotionally broken at being beaten up by Terry Silver, which it was so satisfying when he got to beat him at the end of the season in that fight, remembering the techniques that Silver taught him all the way back in the 3rd movie. Just a lot of Karate Kid Part 3 love in this season. And the whole story of how Daniel was a broken man. He was a broken man. He was a beaten up man. And then he goes into the little Miyagi, like little area where he sees all of the things that Mr. Miyagi left him, and he gets very emotional. And Ralph Macchio, just phenomenal performance, tugged at the heartstrings. And they've done a lot of that here. And then having all of the kids come together for Ralph Macchio, that is for Daniel LaRusso, played by Ralph Macchio. And then that episode ending with Johnny, Daniel, and Chozen, the 3 of them looking at these kids about to train them, that I was so emotionally moved. I was sobbing. The music, everything about that scene, I watched it twice. It really hit me emotionally. I was wondering if the show was going to do that. It definitely tried. There were a lot of powerful moments, but that right there was it for me, and I cannot wait for season 6. I'm watching it later today, and I'm excited. I am excited. So, season 5, thumbs up. People love it. Yeah, some a little over the top at parts, but still enjoyable and still fun. And I'm used to it already. At this point, I've seen stuff that's so much more unrealistic that this is just whatever to me. It is a little bit goofy, but again, the Karate Kid Part 3 was goofy and over the top, so they already kind of set that back then. What did you think about Season 5? Let me know. Oh, and something else too. Last review, I called Samantha Amanda and vice versa. That time I did it on purpose. 2 shows ago when I did Season 4, I think it was Season 4. No, Season 3. Season 3, I called Robbie Bobby. That was a mistake, but the Samantha Amanda thing was on purpose. But this time, no mistakes. So, anyways, take care.